Here's a dark fantasy story based on your title Crimson Tracks Through the Elden Vale, a hunt forged in fire and forgotten oaths. Let me know if you'd like it expanded into chapters or adapted into a different format. Crimson Tracks Through the Elden Vale, a hunt forged in fire and forgotten oaths. The wind whispered secrets through the twisted boughs of the Elden Vale, a forest long cursed and older than the kingdoms that had risen and crumbled at its borders. Its trees bled sap the color of dried blood, and the mist that clung to the ground reeked faintly of ash and iron. Few entered willingly, fewer returned. But Kalen Ashward had never been one for safe roads. He knelt at the edge of a gully, fingertips brushing the ground, blood, still warm, smeared across bent reeds and churned soil. The tracks were clawed, too wide for any natural beast, and spaced with the eerie precision of something that walked half in this world, half in shadow. A crimson trail wound deeper into the forest's heart. He had seen such signs before, years ago, when he still wore the crimson mantle of the Oathbound, a brotherhood of hunters who had once bound themselves in blood to defend the realm against the dark. That oath had burned away in fire and betrayal when his comrades were slaughtered by the very creature they swore to destroy. And yet, it lived. Kalen's hand drifted to the scorched hilt at his hip. His blade, Vaindar, had once sung with the fire of the forge and the magic of the Vale itself. Now, it was dulled. Its enchantment faded, like his faith. But this hunt was not born of faith. It was vengeance. As he followed the tracks, the Vale stirred around him. Shadows lengthened unnaturally. The trees whispered names long dead. At the center of it all, a presence watched, ancient, hateful, amused. Hours passed, perhaps days. Time folded in strange ways here. The deeper Kalen pressed, the more his mind drifted to the old days, to the oaths sworn beneath moonlit pines, the laughter of brothers, the screams in the firelight. And then he found it. A clearing opened before him, bathed in bloodlight from a moon eclipsed. In its center stood the beast, taller than any man, hunched and horned, with eyes like molten gold. Its claws dripped crimson. "You've come," it rasped, voice like crackling parchment. "After all these years." Kalen drew his blade. No ceremony, no warning. The battle was fire and ruin. Every strike he landed burned with memory. Every wound he took whispered of old sins. But the sword, dead for so long, began to glow, dimly at first, then brighter, until flames surged along its edge once more. The final blow split sky from earth. When dawn broke through the Vale's curse, the trees wept sap no longer. The beast was gone. Its body vanished. But its blood remained, smoldering in a trail back through the woods. Kalen did not follow it. He sheathed his blade, turned north, and walked, leaving crimson tracks of his own in the earth. Would you like this developed into a full novella or series outline? Here is the next part of Crimson Tracks Through the Elden Vale, a hunt forged in fire and forgotten oaths. Part 2, Ash and Echoes. Kalen limped through the waking vale, the unnatural haze beginning to lift as the forest slowly remembered how to breathe. Though the beast had fallen, he knew better than to trust appearances. Evil left roots in the soil, tendrils beneath the bark. It slept, it whispered, it waited. The trail he followed was no longer the beast's, it was his. His blood. The battle had taken more from him than he'd realized. Not just strength or time, but something deeper. The sword, once relit with fire, was now ice-cold and dim. He felt the echo of a presence that had surged through it in the final strike, a fragment of the Vale itself, maybe, or something older still, and it had not left him. He made camp by a river that stank of brine and bone. As he tried to sleep, a voice stirred in the back of his mind. "Oathbreaker, Oathkeeper, which are you now?" He snapped awake, hand on his sword. Nothing, only the wind, only the dark. But when he turned to the water, he saw the reflection of someone not there. 3 days later, he reached Hollowmere. It was the last village before the true wilderness began, a place where folk still hung bone charms over their doors and carved runes into their fields. They remembered the old names. They remembered the fire. Kalen was not welcome. "You should be dead," muttered a hunched woman at the tavern, her eye white and sightless, but locked to his. "The Vale marked you. You let it in." He said nothing. There was nothing to say. But that night, as he rested in the hayloft of a barn, a child approached him, barefoot, pale-eyed. She carried a tooth in her hand, long, black, curved. This fell from the sky, she whispered. We thought it was just a rock, but it grew hot when you came. I think it's calling you. Kalen took it. It pulsed faintly in his palm. He knew then that the hunt was not over. The beast in the clearing had been a harbinger, not the source. There were others, ancient things that had slept beneath the Elden Vale since before the first kings. The oath he once swore had not been to kill a single creature, but to guard the gate to their world. He had failed. Now, the gate stirred. And the fire in his blood was not vengeance anymore. It was warning. Would you like me to continue with part 3 or expand this section into more detailed scenes? Here is part 3 of Crimson Tracks Through the Elden Vale, a hunt forged in fire and forgotten oaths. Part 3, The Gate Beneath the Roots. The Fong was not of any beast Kalen knew. It thrummed with a frequency that pulled at the scar along his chest, the one left by the creature he thought he'd slain. His dreams grew stranger with each passing night. He saw a tree, vast and black, its roots threading through a sky of ash. Beneath it, a gate pulsed with ancient sigils, carved from stone that wept blood. It was real. He'd heard legends in his oathbound days, of the Root Gate, a seal driven deep into the heart of the Elden Vale after the War of Dimming Stars. The oathbound had guarded it in secret, believing the magic within long buried. But secrets rot, and oaths, when broken, fester. Kalen returned to the Vale. This time, the forest welcomed him. The trees bent subtly as he passed, birds fell silent, mists parted at his approach. It was as though the forest recognized something in him now, not just an intruder or hunter, but a key. The Fong burned hotter as he walked. It pointed the way, like a compass of bone. And eventually, he found the tree. It was not dead, but it was dying. Its bark was split with glowing red cracks. Its leaves curled in black frost, though the air was warm. At its base yawned a stairwell spiraling into the roots. Symbols glowed faintly on the stone, the same runes once carved into oathbound blades. His sword, Vaindar, flared dimly in response. He descended. The air beneath the veil was thick and humming, alive with ancient memory. Faint whispers echoed in forgotten tongues. Shadows curled with intent. The deeper Kalen went, the more his memories twisted, faces of fallen comrades watching him from between the roots, eyes hollow, accusing. At last, the stair ended in a vast chamber. The root gate stood at its center, a colossal arch of obsidian-veined stone, sealed with chains of silver and fire. But the chains were cracking. 3 were already shattered. A 4th glowed red-hot, strained to breaking. Something stirred beyond it. Kalen stepped forward. The Fong in his hand crumbled to ash. From the darkness behind the gate, it spoke. One oath was broken, another must be made. Kalen gripped his sword. I swore once. I failed. I won't again. The voice was amused. Then step forward. Fireborn, bleed for your vow. Bind yourself once more. The chamber answered. Roots lashed out and pierced Kalen's flesh. He gritted his teeth, eyes burning. The blood that dripped from his veins hissed against the stone, forming symbols that flared bright gold. The last chain pulsed, and held. For now. Kalen collapsed, breath ragged, vision dim, but the gate was sealed, the whispering stilled, the dark receded. He had reforged the oath. But at what cost? He rose, alone, beneath the world, a sentinel once more, a keeper of forgotten fire. And somewhere, far beyond the trees, something else stirred, angry that it had been denied. For now. Would you like part 4 to continue deeper into the lore and introduce new characters or threats? Here is part 4 of Crimson Tracks Through the Elden Vale, a hunt forged in fire and forgotten oaths. Part 4, Embers Among the Ruins. Kalen emerged from the earth like a man reborn, or buried. The dawn light stung his eyes, but the air tasted cleaner than it had in days. The Vale, though still wounded, breathed easier. Leaves rustled with cautious hope, yet the weight in his chest had only deepened. He had reforged the oath. Yes, sealed the root gate again, but he'd felt it in the blood ritual. The others had stirred. The gate was not the only one. The Elden Vale was riddled with scars, some sealed, some forgotten, some left to rot. And someone, or something, was trying to open them. He would need allies, but the oathbound were gone, all save one. The ruins of Hearthfall Keep lay 3 days east, past the Witherflow and the silent pines. Once, it had been a stronghold of flame and steel, the last bastion of the Oathbound before the slaughter. Moss now covered its walls, and wild briars had strangled the old towers. But someone had lit a fire in the watchtower. Kaelin approached cautiously. The door creaked open with a whisper of ash. Inside, the great hall was broken. Roof collapsed, but in its center stood a woman clad in remnants of red and black, armor dulled but cared for. Her hair was silvered, though she had not yet seen 40 winters. A scar carved across her neck marked where she'd nearly died once. Varen Blackmere. Kaelin stopped in the doorway. "I thought you were dead," he said quietly. She didn't turn. "I was." Then the gate stirred, and I remembered what I swore. That night, by the fire, they spoke of old times, of dead friends, of the betrayal that shattered the Oathbound from within. Varen leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Someone let the beast into the world, Kaelin, not just by negligence, by design. I've been tracing the sigils found at the old sites. They match runes from a banned sect in the Oathbound archives, one we buried centuries ago." Kaelin stiffened. "You think someone within the Order opened the first gate?" She nodded. "Not someone. A name we thought was legend. The Ember King." A shiver passed through Kaelin, like a distant bell tolling. He had read the name once, long ago, a traitor who tried to bind the fire of the Vale itself, to rule it. If he had returned, or if his disciples had, then this was more than a hunt. This was a war being reignited beneath their feet. Varen drew a dagger and pressed it to her palm. "We swore once, you and I, to guard the gates, to stand watch over the dark. I say we swear again, not as Oathbound, not as relics, but as firewalkers." Kaelin met her gaze. Then he bled into her hand. Their flames were reignited. And the hunt began anew. Shall I continue with part 5, where they begin uncovering more gates and confront the cult behind the Ember King's legacy? Here is part 5 of Crimson Tracks Through the Elden Vale, a hunt forged in fire and forgotten oaths. Part 5, The Ash Circle. The fire that bound their new oath had barely cooled when the sky began to change. Kaelin and Varen watched from the tower ruins as black cinders drifted down like snowflakes. But these ashes didn't fall, they rose, spiraling skyward, drawn toward a crimson halo now ringed around the moon. A sign. Another gate was stirring. They set out at first light, following old trails that once connected the Oathbound outposts. Their destination, Stonewake, a buried sanctum carved into a cliffside near the Weeping Gulf. It was said to house a map etched not on paper, but into a wall of living stone that marked the sealed gates across the continent. If any survived, it would be there. But the forest did not part so easily this time. The Vale was sick again. The roots bled, the rivers turned to sludge, and the deeper they went, the more Kaelin felt something watching them, something not of beast or man, but bound in hunger and memory. They reached Stonewake at dusk. It was worse than they feared. The entrance had been unsealed, blackened by fire and sorcery. Wardstones lay shattered, still steaming as if freshly broken. Inside, the air pulsed with a familiar presence, dark, oily, wrong. They drew weapons and entered. Within the central chamber, they found the Ash Circle. 13 figures stood around the map wall, cloaked in smoke and silence, their faces hidden by masks carved from scorched bone. The center of the circle was a brazier, burning with fire that cast no light. Symbols danced within it, alive. Varen hissed. "They're using ember rites, forbidden flamecraft. This is his work." A voice rose from the circle, calm, ancient, laced with cruel reverence. "We are the embers of the king, and the fire has remembered its masters." Kaelin stepped forward. "The Ember King died with the fall of the old world. You worship a corpse." Laughter echoed, low and layered. "The king never died. He waits in flame and shadow. You sealed one gate, but others open. Even now, you are too late." With a hiss, the brazier flared and the figures vanished, leaving only a scorched mark in the stone. The map wall behind them still glowed, but now, 3 points blazed with fire. 3 gates. Varen cursed. "They're opening them one by one, weakening the Vale. Once enough fail, the last gate will tear open on its own." Kaelin turned to her, eyes grim. "Then we hunt them, one by one, gate by gate, before the fire consumes the world." She nodded. Sword drawn. Then let the fire burn, with us at its edge. To be continued. Would you like Part 6 to follow them to the first of the 3 Blazing Gate sites, or introduce a new antagonist or revelation? Here is Part 6 of Crimson Tracks Through the Elden Vale, a hunt forged in fire and forgotten oaths. Part 6, The Hollow Gate. Of the 3 burning points on the map, one lay to the south, beyond the Blightbarrow marshes, where the land was sunken and foul, and nothing but crows dared roost. The Hollow Gate, the wall named it, sealed in the time before writing, guarded by a monastic order that had not been heard from in over a century. Kaelin and Varen traveled in silence. The deeper they moved into the blighted lands, the more the world grew still. No insects, no bird song, even the wind seemed to recoil from the earth. A haze hung low, and the scent of decay clung to their cloaks. On the 3rd night, Kaelin dreamed. A voice whispered behind his ear, though no breath stirred his neck, "You carry flame, Oathkeeper, but even fire forgets what it burns." He awoke with frost coating his blade. They reached the ruins of Monastery Lethrin at twilight. What had once been a proud stone sanctum was now sunken into the marsh, its spires bent and blackened. Statues of robed monks lay half-submerged, their eyes gouged out. The silence was absolute. Inside, they found no bodies, only empty robes, laid neatly across stone benches and altar steps, as if their wearers had vanished into ash. At the lowest level of the monastery, they found the gate. It was different from the root gate. This one was made of petrified bone, woven with sinew-like metal. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, and was partially open, just a crack wide enough for something to slip through. And something had. Tracks led out into the swamp, splayed, clawed, unnatural, but before they could follow, they heard it. Breathing. Slow, wet, from the shadows behind them. They turned and saw a monk, still in his robes, but wrong. His skin was stretched too tightly, and his eyes were gone. In their place, flickering flame. He spoke in a voice that was not his. "You cannot stop what is already undone. The gate is open. The Hollow King wakes." Dozens more robed figures stepped from the walls, rising from the swamp, silent. Each bore a brand upon their chest, the sigil of the Ember King, burned into dead flesh. Kaelin drew Vaendar. "We stop it, or we burn with it." Varen lit her torch. "Then let's light the swamp." The battle was chaos's fire and bone, light against rot. Varen's torch swept wide, igniting robes and shrieking corpses. Kaelin struck down the monk hosts with fury and flame, Vaendar burning brighter with each oath remembered. And as the last body fell, the gate began to close, slowly, painfully. Varen shoved her blade into the mechanism. With a scream of stone and bone, the hollow gate sealed. But something scratched from the other side, something still trying to claw its way through. Kaelin placed his palm on the gate and whispered the ancient vow. "Let fire be the ward, let blood be the bond, let the oath never break again." The gate stilled. They stood alone, the fog thinning. One gate sealed, 2 remained. But far to the north, behind mountain storms and forgotten cities, a new fire had been lit by mortal hands, and fed by madness. And in its glow, a crown of ash began to rise. Want Part 7 to follow the next gate, the Ember King's first general, or a revelation from Kaelin's past? Here is Part 7 of Crimson Tracks Through the Elden Vale, a hunt forged in fire and forgotten oaths. Part 7, The Crown of Ash. Smoke rose from the northern horizon, black and thick, unnatural. Villages had gone silent along the mountain's edge, their roads dusted in ash despite no fires having reached them. At the center of the disturbance stood the ancient fortress of Careth Varn, abandoned since the last War of Succession. Now, it was alive again, lit not by torches, but by a pyre that burned with no fuel and cast no warmth. At its peak stood a man, clad in robes of ember-threaded bronze, his face hidden behind a mask of molten iron. He watched the sky with arms outstretched. Runes carved across his flesh glowed dimly beneath his skin, and in his hand, he held a scepter shaped like a broken jawbone. They called him Ashriath, the Ember King's first general, raised from fire and pain, forged in the unsealing of the first gate. He was not alive, but he remembered what it was to be. Kaelin and Varen rode hard. News had reached them from a fleeing trader. Careth Varn had been turned into a temple of fire. Refugees spoke of chanting from within the stone, and figures who burned without dying, who walked through walls and whispered dreams into sleeping minds. The Ember Circle had begun their next ritual, and this time, they weren't opening a forgotten gate. They were building one. The fortress loomed on a cliff carved by time and siege. Its gates had melted and reformed in strange, flowing shapes. The walls pulsed faintly like lungs. As Kaelin and Varen climbed through the dead woods toward it, they saw lines of ash trailing across the earth, markings etched by thousands of feet, all walking in the same direction. Pilgrims. When they reached the outer wall, a voice echoed down the stones. You arrive late, Oathkeepers, but not too late to kneel. Ashriath stood above them, flanked by two flame-bound knights. His voice was cold fire. The world was not broken by fire, it was born of it. The Ember King only seeks to return it to truth. Kaelin stepped forward. He seeks power, nothing more. Ashriath tilted his head. Power is truth. He raised the scepter, and the mountains screamed. The sky tore open in flame. A rift formed above Kareth Varn, red and gold lightning ripping through the clouds. Figures began to descend, beings of pure cinder and shadow, shaped like men, eyes burning with purpose. Varen drew steel. If we can destroy the scepter, the ritual will break. Kaelin nodded. Then we go through fire. The battle that followed would become legend. Kaelin faced Ashriath in the heart of the ritual chamber, beneath a floating circle of flame where the gate tried to finish itself. Vaendar clashed with the scepter, sparks and runes flaring with each blow. The spirits of old Oathbound seemed to echo around them, watching, waiting. Meanwhile, Varen fought her way to the runic pyre, cutting through flame-bound cultists. She plunged her blade into the sigil at its base, and the fire screamed as if it were alive. Ashriath faltered. Kaelin struck. The scepter shattered. The sky closed. When it ended, the fortress lay quiet, its walls charred and still. Ashriath's mask remained, cracked in two, resting beside the blackened remains of his form. Varen limped to Kaelin's side. Two gates sealed, one remains. Kaelin didn't speak. He was staring at a mark left in the stone by the ritual, a sigil they both recognized. The Ember King's crown. But this time, it was incomplete. Beneath it, a name was scrawled in runeblood. Kaelin. To be continued. Shall we continue to part 8? With Kaelin questioning his own past and the possibility that he's tied more closely to the Ember King than he ever knew?